Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for listening to today's podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with James Leonard. Really, really super cool dude. James was on the Tommy Tiernan show in January, and I think he really stole the show that night. Really inspirational, incredible story. Speaking to James today about his life so far. In a lot more depth and hopefully, even though me and James were slightly caught for a little bit of time when we were doing this, I would really like to think we caught the real essence of his story so far. And I would like to think that it's a very inspirational story for so many people, that it can show you that we often want to think and perceive that life should go in a very specific way, and people's paths in life should be very, very specific. But I think from James's story, we can see that there's many, many ways that we can arrive at a destination in life where we're achieving great, great things. And I think James's story has that in abundance. I really, really hope you enjoy it. For those of you who don't know, James and Timmy Long, they do a podcast every week. It's known as the Two Norries, a fantastic podcast. It's all about social issues, mental health issues, and addiction issues. And it's a super, super podcast, massive views. So check that out for those of you that haven't listened to the podcast, or it's on YouTube as well, so you can watch the podcast. And really hope you enjoy the story. And thank you very much for listening or watching. Thank you. Been super excited to speak with James now for quite a while. James, thanks for coming on, buddy. Really nice to have you. And I know you're really, really busy, and you were kind of under pressure even to get on for me today. So thanks a million. I really do appreciate it. Uh, so for people that don't know James, James's story is definitely one of a lot of hope and inspiration. I think especially the times we're in and the difficulties that we're in, I think James's story is so, so positive for so many people out there. So many people's path isn't straightforward in life. And I think James, if we just briefly touch on it, James has been in addiction, I suppose, until he got into recovery for a majority of his life. James has spent time in and out of prison, and he's been homeless, and a full 360 to now being accepted for a PhD in UCC. And a little birdie told me, James, actually, that you did so well in your master's that they would have thrown a PhD at you. And that's someone that's well in the know. James, thanks a million for coming on, buddy. Uh, so
Thanks a million for having me.
it's a pleasure, pleasure. Maybe we could start, James, with, and you can kind of lead into that yourself. Growing up in Ardcullen, and I know you moved to Knocknaheeny first, so and what that was like for you as a young person.
Yeah, well, I was born in Dublin, and when I was a baby, we moved to Knocknaheeny in 1986. I was born in 85. We moved there in 86. Knocknaheeny in the mid to late 80s was mad. And through the 90s, around 1990, then we moved to Hollyhill, Ardcullen, which is just a couple of 100 meters down the road. It's the same area, really. But we'd be closer to Apple Computers. European headquarters would be at the back of us, you know. But the contrast between the billions of Apple and the not so much money in my home area would have been wide, you know. But at the same time, I loved growing up there, even though there was a lot of social issues there, a lot of antisocial behaviour, joyriding and drugs and addiction, mental health issues, stuff like that. When you're from there, that's all you know. So, you know, I'm still living up here on the north side now, and yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it today, you know what I mean? But I suppose it's only later in life when I started looking back, especially when I was going through education, and I learned that not all neighborhoods has all those issues that I have, you know. And even when I started going into prison, and I seen a lot of the people in there from my area, and not so many people from other areas, that gets you thinking, like, we're not all born bad in one area and all born good in another area. There's other circumstances and variables at play that lead a certain group into prison and another group not into prison, in terms of resources, finances, and stuff like that, you know. So yeah, from a working class area, very proud to be from there, still up there. I suppose we grew up in the 90s there, where there would have been high levels of unemployment and high percentage of lone parent families. There would have been a lot of drug use, as I said. And for some reason, we looked up, me and my peers, now when I say me and my friends, we looked up to the negativity, the joyriders, the drug dealers. That's kind of was our role models, you know. Now, it has to be said too, that most people in that area don't get involved in drugs or criminality, you know. But there's a significant amount do, and I was part of that significant amount. So with that, you know, I was in primary school in Knocknaheeny, and I enjoyed primary school. I went to secondary school then in Northman, which is a famous school here in Cork and Fairhill. Terence McSweeney and Tomas McCurtain and Sean O'Halapine and all these people who went to the man. I hated it, you know, and I didn't get on well there at all. It was a Christian Brothers school. It was really strict. It was all boys, no soccer, only GA, and I just didn't like it. And around that time as well, my dad was after going to prison. There was a lot of trouble at home. I was changing, becoming a boy, from a boy coming into a man. There was a lot going on, and I just got into a lot of trouble in school. You know, I didn't want to be there. And I think with hindsight now, probably my mother would have taken me out of school at that stage and put me into another school, or letting me just do a trade or something. But she was adamant that all her kids got at least to leave and such, you know. So, yeah.
And I suppose that transition, obviously, then from primary to secondary school was very, very challenging. And was it around that time that your dad had gone to prison, or kind of were you still in primary school? Or
Yeah, exactly. Just when I was in sixth class, I mean, going into first year, it was around that time as well. And yeah, making the transition into school is not easy at the best of times.
yeah,
Around that time as well, obviously you've been hurt and stuff like that, and you know that had a big impact on the family.
you're missing
But
your dad as well, of course. Like, and
of course, exactly. And then in the school was not very understanding around anything like that, you know, and there was no support in place for me or my family to deal with any of that, and there was no questions asked as to why I was misbehaving, why I was finding it so hard to concentrate and do well in school, even though I was obviously very bright. You know, it was not nurtured in me at all, and there would have been labels thrown at me by teachers and scumbag and thug and all very bad reports and all these things, you know. So it was just all negative.
all negative stuff. Yeah. Was there ever kind of any support from teachers at the time, or was that the experience that it was really negative? Like,
No support whatsoever in the man. I couldn't think of one teacher I had that tried to offer me help or guidance or support or give me the time of day. And I'm not like, if there was a teacher, I would give them the credit in the world. In my lifetime, I've come across primary school teachers, university lecturers, Gardaí, prison officers that have been nice to me, and I could easily say, yeah, do you know what, they're not all like that. But in that school, it was just a bad experience from start to finish.
Yeah, it's very hard as a young person, and you're struggling, and you're missing your dad, and you're just trying to figure out becoming a young adult. And when we're spoken to and talked to like that, it's extremely challenging. Um,
Yeah.
when did kind of drugs maybe kind of come on the scene for you, James?
I think I was tailor made for an addiction with all that was going on there, you know. It was like,
Yeah.
I was a volatile young man, and I was very hurt and angry and stuff like that. And when you add drugs into that mix, it's always going to end in a disaster, you know, because the drugs just help to quell all that negative internal emotions, you know. So I suppose as I got a little bit mature in my things as well, I became insecure and I became shy and withdrawn, um, lacking confidence and self-esteem, poor self-image, it was just all negative, and I just became, when I started drinking, taking drugs, then when I was about 15 or 16, just drinking and smoking hash on the weekends type of thing,
Yeah.
Um,
Kind of experimenting.
that was it. But once I started, I knew like that, especially I started taking ecstasy in my late teens. I knew then like that this is what I should be doing, it just felt so right. Just, took away all that shit I was feeling and made me feel love and warmth and belonging and connection with my peers and all that, So that was really it. It didn't really matter what the substance was after that. It was always about blocking out what I was feeling inside, and it was different drugs down through the years,
And I think a lot of people, maybe that haven't experienced addiction or maybe haven't had a family member addiction, they struggle sometimes to understand that, but like for you as a young person, I think it's so common for so many young people, often that kind of insecurity and shyness or even anxiety, you find something, whether it's alcohol or whether it's drugs, and it brings you out of that. And even finding that social group where you feel that sense of connection, even at some level, if it's unhealthy, it's
Yeah.
still connection, isn't it? And it's positive. And yeah.
Exactly, and I think as well around when I was coming into my late teens, then around 18 or 19, my mental health would have been very poor at that stage, and there would have been suicidal ideation and self harm and stuff like that. And but it was around that time as well I started getting addicted to benzodiazepines. Now, an addiction to benzodiazepines is not good. It's never good. Let me just say that. But I think there was a part of that saved me as well, because even though I was zonked out of my head and I was getting into a lot of trouble because when I was taking benzos and drinking alcohol, my behaviour was very erratic, and we would have been a lot of antisocial behaviour and joyriding and fighting and stuff like that, public order offences. But the tablets blocked out everything, everything, and it stopped me from, stopped the self harm and the suicidal ideation and the thoughts of the feelings of wanting to kill myself. It helped me get through that stage.
Hmm.
Even though I was going in and out of prison at that stage, and I was zonked out of my head, and it was causing a lot of harm for me. Um, there was no, I wasn't wanting to kill myself, So it was a
Yeah.
self medication, and that's the way I always looked at the drugs that I took. It was a self medication all the time to help me deal with what I couldn't deal with, or help me cope. It was like a poor coping skills.
Yeah. Like it's almost trying to escape, isn't it, from those uncomfortable feelings we can't sit with, and
Yeah,
it's that kind of becoming a different, distorted version of yourself. I think as Gabor met, he kind of says it well. Um,
yeah.
can you remember your first time, kind of that recall of your first time going to prison, and what would that experience was like for you?
Yeah, the first time I went in, I was afraid of my life because I was only a scrawny 18-year-old, and when you're going into prison for the first time, you have an idea in your head of what it's like, and Um, so I was afraid and I was anxious and all that. But then there was a part of me who was excited because I was going into prison, you know what I mean? And it was like something that we looked up to do when we were young.
Yeah, can you explain that for people? Because, again, I don't have a good understanding of that in relation to clients to be working with and stuff. But uh, what is that, sometimes of that kind of experience of going to prison? It's kind of a coming of age for, in a,
Yeah, well, it's like this. Like if your dad is a mechanic, isn't it the most natural thing in the world to want to be a mechanic? And if your dad is a postman or a prison officer or a carpenter or a teacher or whatever, it's the most natural thing in the world to follow that, or your big brother or your uncle, and that's the same thing really. Like, it was the people in, because my dad was in there, I thought, it'd be cool now if I went in there, and my friends was in there, their older brothers and their dads, and there's so many people in the area older than me that we looked up to that was in there. So it was like, you're becoming a man now. You're after being in Cork prison, you're a man. There was that element to it. So then when you get out, then you have, when you're a young fella like that, it's bravado as well, machismo and stuff like that. And you get out and telling your friends about, it's all that. It gives you all the street cred, I suppose, when you're a young punk like that, and you're immature, and a very kind of a warped sense of, what a man is, masculinity and stuff like that. So that's kind of what it is. It's very hard for people to understand, like when you're not from an area or a culture like that. It's a very warped sense of reality or masculinity, as I said.
And it really kind of continues the cycle, though, doesn't it? Like it feeds it in a way that that kind of negative mindset of maybe what we feed into believing uh, is our life and is right for us. And um, y-
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
like it's, sorry, as well when you're going as a young person like that, as an 18-year-old, that fear is there, right? But then once you go in there and you realize actually there's nothing to be afraid of, and there's so many people from my neighborhood in this place, and so many people like me in this place. Once that fear is gone, prison is never a deterrent after that, and going into prison then is just like an occupational hazard for somebody that's using drugs like that, it's just something that you have to endure every now and then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I still work with people today in addiction, but and I'd find sometimes that people that are going to prison, they're actually kind of looking forward to it, and not even in a negative context, but if they are, in chaotic addiction, it's often a place where they find it's a reprieve from that, and they can kind of get away from the chaos. And was that
Yeah.
some of your experience of it?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when I started using heroin, I think prison was like respite for me. It helped you regenerate your body, and just give you a break because heroin addiction it's a harsh thing to endure. It's very taxing on the body, and it's very isolating emotionally from your friends, family, and partners, and stuff like that. So to go into prison then and to have connections back with your family, even if it is through a phone call or the odd visit, and to be able to go to the school and go to the gym, have a social circle in there, play cards, um, all day, go to the gym, go to the school, these things that I didn't have on the outside, I had on the inside, and sometimes I felt probably freer with more options within the confines of the four walls in there than I did on the outside with this freedom. Because when I was free, it wasn't really free. I was bound to a chemist and to a drug dealer and to a door office and to a GP, so I was very limited, so yeah, prison was not something that was a deterrent for me, and it was something that probably saved me at times too, where I would go to court in such a bad condition and the judge would give me 6, 8 months, 9 months, 4 months, whatever it was, probably out of mercy. But it's just to show as well, like it's a bad indictment on society when somebody that's obviously very sick in that stage of their life, that there's no other option really than put somebody into prison. And even one of the prison officers used to say to me, like, you shouldn't be in here at all, James. Like, you're in and out here the whole time, but it's not working for you. You're not committing any crimes other than was to get the drugs or getting caught with drugs.
Mhm.
And it's true, like, maybe treatment, if treatment was offered, they could have gotten it a lot sooner,
Mhm.
But hopefully things are changing.
Yeah, please God, yeah. It kind of offers you the security sometimes and the structure that you need that you just don't have or you can't find outside of prison sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly, and the structure is important as well. And when I went to St. Francis Farm, eventually treatment centre in Tullow, County Carlow, I think the structure there played a big part in me regaining some of that self confidence, self esteem, and self worth, and giving me, something, a purpose in life to get up to during the day and do a bit of work and do some groups and, just do some art and whatever it was, just
Mm.
every day we got up, we worked on the farm and we did other kind of stuff as well, At the end of the day, you feel like, you're after doing the day's work and it just builds your confidence, and it helps you to see the good in yourself, because when you're a drug addict like that, like you just feel like you feel like shit, and pardon my language, like, but you just feel like worthless. And I think it's a treatment center like that. It gives you back your self worth.
Yeah, and had you been in treatment previous to that, maybe a couple of times, and I think you were, but sometimes coming out, it's the kind of guilt and the shame attached to maybe the past and what has happened and things you've done.
Mm.
Like, was that something that kind of contributed maybe to relapse and the difficulty sometimes that treatment can be fantastic, but actually coming out of treatment is often a really challenging process for people. Like, okay, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and anybody at all can get sober. Anybody can get sober. It's maintaining it is the hard thing, Like anybody, it's easy to stay sober in a treatment center or in a prison, It's when you get out into the real world, that's where you've done most of your using. That's where you picked up all the issues as to why you're using in the first place, So even with the best of intentions, working with treatment centres and key workers and charities and stuff like that, when I get out of prison or get out of the treatment centre, was always a relapse on the day. Because when you get out of them facilities, the reality of it hits. The reality of the identity you have, James Leonard, the junkie, scumbag, prisoner, drug addict. These are the kind of things you're telling yourself. Who you gonna go to now? You know, what are you gonna do? Move out of your, go where? Who's gonna give you a job? Who's gonna give you a gaff? You know, these things start creeping into you, and then you start thinking about the things you're after doing in addiction and the shame and guilt and all these things, and then the fear. The fear is what really drove me back to drugs all the time. It was just a constant fear in my stomach and an anxiety, um, just about like, it's hard to describe, you know, but as soon as you get out of the prison or as soon as you get out of the treatment, all them reasons why you were using benzos and heroin in the first place just come flooding back and overwhelming. And the task ahead of you to change your whole life, your whole personality, your whole identity, and move into the unknown is just overwhelming. And it's very easy to look for the quick fix and the drug, which eases everything. Because when you're stoned, as bad as it is, you just don't care because you're just so numb.
To escape the pain. Um,
Yeah.
what was different for you, do you think, or had you just, when you went to the farm and Francis Farm, for people that wouldn't know what it is, when you went to the farm this time and you'd done your detox and you moved into the house then to do your residential piece, what was different, do you feel, this time round for you that
I think St. Francis Farm was by far the best treatment I've ever done, because it was about, all in all, it was about 6 months. There was 8 weeks in the detox. I was detoxing from methadone and Valium. And then there was about 16 or 17 weeks in the residential side of it. But I needed that, you know. I had a lifetime full of negative core beliefs and negative perceptions, and that I had to work through, you know. I had very self-limiting beliefs about who I was, what a man is, what I could be, you know, all these things, you know, very irrational. I had to work through all those. Also, I think maturity played a part. When I was 27, going on 28, no spring chicken. I'd been through the mill at that stage, you know. I was after going through, I was after taking all the drugs, and I was after exhausting all the different ways and means of using. Um, like I'd kid myself into thinking I won't inject, I'll smoke, I won't take this tablet, I'll take that tablet, I won't drink shorts, I'll drink beer, I'll just smoke hash. It didn't matter what it was, you know, always ended in the same place for me. And I had to go through those stages to come to the realization that I had to surrender, that I was an addict, and that no matter what I used, it was going to end in a disaster for me. So it took me to the age of 27 to come to that realization, you know. Also, when I was getting out, I was put into a house belonged to the Simon, which was a recovery house. You know, it was just a normal. It was a 4-bedroom house in the south side in Wilton here in Cork City, and it was for people that was in early recovery like me, and I had a key worker, and I think that was probably that was instrumental really, because I was kind of minded for the first 12 months. Also another, like, see, there's loads of reasons why, but another one then would be when I tried to get sober the last few times, I'd never went to NA or AA, you know. I'd never even heard of the term recovery. I'd never heard of the term recovery until this time, you know.
you were going it
And
alone as such?
yeah, like
Yeah.
I always felt like, you know, once you're not drinking and taking drugs, that's recovery. It's actually not. It's not. Recovery is way more than putting down the drink and the drug. And once I started to learn that and understand that, then I was going to NA meetings every day of the week, you know. And I started doing my 12 steps. I was doing counselling, psychotherapy. When I got out of treatment, no, all this I was doing aftercare. And I knew like that it was more about putting down the drink and the drug. And I've learned like that my problem was never the drug problem. It was, you know, the drugs was just the manifestation, the physical manifestation of the deep rooted problem, which was my poor coping skills and negative core beliefs and self-esteem and confidence. And once I was able to address all them, you could put the drugs in front of me now. When I've worked in homeless services and addiction services where people would be using in front of me, or I'm dispensing Valium to people, um, And I'm not tempted at all. Because why? Because I've addressed all these other issues.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think, there's always something underneath that's driving it in the first place. Like,
Yeah.
do you mind, James? Like you've been homeless a few times, and for different periods of your life, and can you maybe talk a little bit about that and what that's life was like for you, and how difficult that might have been for you?
Yeah, it's very. It doesn't do anything for your confidence and your self-esteem. When you're wandering the street, nowhere to go, nobody to turn to. That's a very bad place to be. And I would have slept on people's couches, couch surfing, and staying in different people's houses. And if I had a load of drugs, that might buy me a few days in certain houses. And then if I was after running out of drugs or money, you're screwed again, type of thing. So kind of using people that way. Then I would have slept in my mum's shed and people's garden sheds. I'd slept rough in my home neighbourhood, up in the basketball courts, and just walking around. It's just a ship. It's just the precarity of it. Not knowing where you're going to be, or where you're going to sleep, or the hunger as well, being hungry as well, and thirsty, and these things that you don't really think about. But because like as bad as it was, and as hungry as you'll be, if you found €50, you wouldn't buy food out of it. Like, it would always be drugs. And then it would be a matter of going into Cork penny dinners. I used to go into here in Cork and get food. I used to get food, and there's a bus, a yellow Christian bus there on Pope's Quay outside the church. They do soup and sandwiches and biscuits at 1 o'clock as well. I'd go in there, and that was it really. But it's not a nice thing. No, it's definitely not a nice thing. But the isolation, I suppose, of that is probably the worst part of it.
Yeah, that loneliness and isolation, it's really something that kind of drives on the addiction as well, isn't it? Like, kind of feeds it and kind of often
There's a
exact.
there's a good book there, Chasing the Scream, and another one,
Oh
Lost
yeah,
Connections. But the man's name is Johan Harry, but he
Johan Hardy.
talks about addiction being primarily a result of losing the connection with other people, and isolation. And I think he was hitting the nail on the head there. The more stigmatized you are, the more isolated you become. And I think the more isolated I became, the worse the addiction got. And so isolation is a big thing, and even in recovery, um, I always have to be wary of the isolation. Kind of breaking away from friends, and I can be very comfortable in my own company. And sometimes you have to just be aware of that as well, because you're not supposed to. We're social people,
Yeah, we have this.
but I think I can be very comfortable on my own.
Yeah, that's a great book, actually. Lost Connections. I think it's a fantastic book for everybody to read. Really, it's mainly around anxiety and depression, but that inherent need within us all to
Yeah,
kind of connect with people is, from the moment we're born. Really,
yeah,
it's super super important. Um,
yeah.
like, so when you came out then of Francis Farm, you kind of got into Cork Simon, and like where did the kind of educational process start for you at that point, James? If we can go there.
Yeah, well, when I come out of the treatment centre, I went into the house belonging to the Simon. Then I was after getting a mutual friend of ours, Fiona Hagenson. I got herself and one of her colleagues, Jackie Foley. They got me a CE scheme working with the Simon, which was cleaning their administration building here in Cove Street in Cork. I was doing that for about a year, but I was thinking to myself, fuck it, I want to do more than this. Like, this is grand and all, like, but I want to do more. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. There's a cliche then in recovery, I want to be a fitness instructor, and all the boys was doing that, and I applied for 2 courses, but I didn't get. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, for sure I was going to get one of these courses, but everything happens for a reason, and I didn't get them, and I was looking for some direction in my life. And then I started dating this woman whom I later married, and she was like, "Do you know what, you're an intelligent man, this brain there, you should use it, it's not going to education." And I thought, education, the college and stuff was for, posh people, definitely not for me anyway. But she gave me a bit of encouragement, and I did a basic computer course through the Simon, a level 3 basic now, like, just to use a computer. And the tutor at the time, his name was Paul. He died not long after. He a young man with a young family, died of cancer, but he was a gent, and he really showed me that learning can be fun. and learning is not the same as school, because I had a bad experience in school, and I left school thinking I was stupid. I was put into the stupid class and I got shitty grades because, I actually wasn't. And I went into the College of Commerce after that then, which is a further education college. And I did applied psychology and social studies. And I got on great there. That was 1 year full time. I done a 3-year degree in youth and community work in UCC. And that was great as well. And after that, then I started working in the Simon. And I remember one of my first days in there, I was in the landing, doing whatever. And one of the residents come up to me, and I know whom I knew, and he says, "Jesus, James, I heard you were doing well." And I was saying, "I actually am. I'm working here." But he thought I was after relapsing. I was homeless.
Yeah.
Just showed me like that I'm not too far removed from them at all. Do you know what I mean? And I loved working in there. The connection I had with the lads, the empathy, and they were very open with me because they could understand that I was where they were, and they would always come to me with queries about treatment centre and how I got well and things I did and steps I took and all these things. So I loved it. After the bachelor's degree, I actually won a scholarship, an excellent scholarship. So I was able to do my master's on a scholarship. I did a criminology master's, which I loved, and I'd encourage anybody to do it because it's great. The team over there are fantastic. It's just because I had a big interest in drug policy and recovery and crime, and I just always interested in understanding myself, my behaviour, my community, and my city, and why things are the way they are. So criminology was perfect for me.
Isn't that amazing though? Sorry, James, to cut across you. Isn't that amazing? Like, to have come from where you had been, and you got this excellent reward, so you go on to do a master's in UCC, like, in criminology. I mean, it's just incredible. And I think there's so many different reasons. Like, people don't have to be in addiction, for younger people not to be in the headspace sometimes for school, and for whether it's junior cert or leaving cert, and there can be so many different things going on for people there, and family issues and different social issues that people just aren't in the headspace for at that point in time, that there's so many different ways to kind of achieve things in life, and to kind of, there's so many different paths and so many different roads that and I think there's so much inspiration in that for so many people out there, like that, even today are struggling, like, and for whatever is going on for them in their life. And can you maybe touch on that a little bit though, that kind of thing where you kind of have to make that switch in your mind to kind of making, look, maybe I need to make a change here, and maybe I kind of need to kind of knock away these self-defeating belief systems that I have about myself, and maybe my worth and what I can do. Is that okay?
Yeah, you made a good point there about like maybe if school didn't go great for you and then you're written off, so you can't study afterwards. Like, it's to go back as a mature student is a beautiful thing, because when you're back as a mature student, you've a lot of lived experience which is valuable to the college and the class. Also, you know what you want in life, and you're after getting through the majors. Like, a lot of distractions for students coming from school, rag week, freshers week, this week, that week, partying.
It's the weekend.
I don't know how they get through college. I tell you, I don't know how they manage. Just be looking at them like, and you'd be under pressure as a student and not using and drinking drugs and getting caught up in that. But when you're a mature student, you're there because you want to be there. You have a goal and you're working towards that. So I think, and also you have to get this into your head that, like, you don't have to be a professor. You don't have to be like straight A's, or like you're in there to learn, get your qualification, and move on. Simple as that. There's plenty of sports supports as well for mature students and for people from non-traditional backgrounds, as they say. People like me from my locality in desh school areas and stuff like that. So I'd encourage anybody to go back, and it's just about like trying something new, and like from a lot of growth that you can, personal growth you can get, is about taking a healthy risk, a calculated healthy risk, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. What's the worst that can happen? You learn something new, meet new people,
Yeah.
and the best that can happen, you find your niche, you find your career, and you set yourself up for life, but there's actually no negatives. There's no negative outcomes of trying something new like that, a healthy risk. And I think throughout my recovery, it's always been taking a healthy risk, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and, just trying new things, meeting new people.
And setting yourself these goals and these challenges. And I went back myself as a mature student, and my head definitely wasn't in the headspace for school when I was there, but you can still set yourself these goals and you can achieve things, and keeping it in the day as well obviously is very, very important. What would be the advice you might give young people from, I suppose, isn't it great us being able, you can reflect back and we can look at things, and but like what advice would you give young people maybe that are struggling with addiction, or maybe even not struggling with addiction, but maybe having these negative this negative self-image or negative self-talk that might go on for a lot of young people out there, that they're not able to do these things? Like what maybe advice could you give those people?
I just think that people can just reach out, and if they're struggling, just to tell somebody that they trust. That's it really. If you keep it to yourself, you're screwed. Like, we can turn molehills into mountains, or whatever that saying is. It's a small thing. When it's kept to yourself, we can make it into a huge thing. But when you relate to somebody that you trust, you will get it perspective on it. Also it's about minding yourself, especially during the pandemic, giving yourself a break. If it means you eat more junk food, or you play more Xbox, or you watch more Netflix, you're fine. You're grand. Just whatever happens, you get through it, and we'll all get through it. And it's about as well. Uh, I suppose if I was talking to somebody that's starting out their life now, maybe adulthood, just about going for it. Life is too short,
Yeah.
you only get one shot at it. And if you're not happy in your job, fucking leave it and try something else. If you're not happy in your course, do something different, like don't settle for less than what you're worth. And it's just about being happy, and that's all it is. Like, it doesn't matter if you're earning 30 grand a year or 60 grand a year, or if you're on the social welfare. If you're happy doing what you're doing, that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, there's so much untapped potential in people that they never really realize unless they push themselves that little bit outside their comfort zone. Actually,
Exactly.
yeah, I had a friend today. Actually, I hadn't spoken to him in a long time, really, but he had contacted me a couple of days ago saying he was going to treatment, and I was really happy for him. But we'd kind of missed each other over and back a little bit. But I got a chance to talk to him this morning. But I was just saying, you know what, this is just a great step for him at this point in time to kind of it's something for him, I think, that would have had a lot of fear attached to it. So yeah, um, James, like, an incredible story, dude. Like, you're working in for the ETB now, aren't you?
Yeah, I work at the Cork ETB, and I have my own podcast as well, the Two Norries
The Two
podcast,
Norries, yeah,
which is a great resource for people in recovery, especially
yeah.
not just addiction, or not just drug addiction or alcohol as well. Eating disorders, gambling, and just for people with a general interest in addiction and social issues. And we've about 34 podcasts in at the moment. We get about 15 to 20,000 people watch it every week. It's on YouTube and Spotify and stuff like that, and it's growing. And it takes up a lot of my free time, but it helps so many people as well. So many people contacting us saying that, especially during lockdown, where traditional supports might be closed. So yeah, working with DTB and youth services, we support the provision of youth work in Cork, and I love that job as well. And yeah, I'm busy out and do things like this as well, and guest lectures and podcasts and
Yeah, yeah.
interviews and stuff like that. But I'm always fighting the fight and flying the flag for recovery and addiction and stuff like that.
That's fantastic, and people do definitely. If you haven't caught up with the lads' podcast, they are really, really incredible. The Two Norries. James, just maybe might finish up now shortly, but just a little bit around what do you actually do for, wellness now, and are you training? Do you do a bit of training? Are you kind of you keeping fit and stuff like what? What? Sorry, what? Oh, oh, very good. You got the bench press there in the room and some weights.
Yeah, I do weights, and weights is a big part of my recovery since day one. And I
Okay,
always
cool.
loved lifting weights, even in prison. And when I come into recovery, so I invested in the dumbbells and the curling bar and the bench and stuff, just because of lockdown. So I just try and keep active. I
Good.
do walking. I have 2 dogs as well. The dogs are a big part of my recovery too.
Yeah.
They help you. Like they're just. It's very hard to stay in a negative mindset when the dogs come over to you. You know, they're such a good, even for people with mental health issues, the dogs are great.
Fabulous companion, like, yeah.
My wife is next to me here as well, so
Oh,
it's
shit.
great to have.
Yeah.
It's great to have such a supportive woman and
Brilliant.
a wife that I love. That we got married 2 years ago now, and she's a great support to me. So and I do a bit of meditation. I do the podcast weekly. I surround myself with people in recovery. I cut the negative people out of my life, and that's It's just if you want new habits, you just have to surround yourself in an environment. No, if you want to gain new healthier habits, you just have to create the environment to make it easier for you. So it's not like my recovery is not a hard slog because my life is structured in a way that makes it easy for me. My job, my wife, my friends, my podcast, my training, it's all very recovery friendly, as opposed to um, being surrounding yourself with people that are using or in a job you don't like or not looking after your physical health because it's all linked.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think actually my friend that I was talking about there earlier asked me one bit of advice, and I said, look, you'll be fine when you're in there and you'll do a great treatment, but it's about cutting ties with people when you come out. And I think that's very important. As hard as it is and how difficult it is, sometimes it is what needs to happen to kind of live a have a healthy recovery and kind of move on with your life, like, and give yourself the life that you deserve. James, very, very inspirational. So much hope there. And like, yeah, I think it's only the beginning, dude. And I think we're going to hear so much about you over the coming years, and continued success with all of your endeavors. And the podcasts are super. I really like listening to them. And thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. It was lovely talking to you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, and thanks a million, buddy. And sure, look, we might talk again sometime.
God bless. I'd love to. Take care.
Thanks, Jen.